Maya Chen thought she had finally found her place in high society. But when the wealthy elite mocked her handmade dress at the most exclusive charity event of the year, she discovered that some secrets are worth more than designer labels. What her billionaire husband revealed next would change everything she thought she knew about worth, dignity, and the power of authenticity. 3 years ago, Maya Chen was restocking shelves at a discount department store, counting every dollar to make rent on her tiny studio apartment. Today, she stood in the marble foyer of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, wearing a dress she had sewn herself from fabric she'd found at a local market. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The contrast wasn't lost on her, especially as she watched the other women glide past in their $1,000 gowns, their jewelry catching the light from crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than her annual salary used to be. The annual Hearts Foundation Gala was the social event of the season, where the city's wealthiest gathered to raise money for children's hospitals while showcasing their status. Maya had been attending these events for 6 months now, ever since she'd married David Richardson, the tech billionaire whose company had revolutionized online security. Their whirlwind romance had been the talk of the society pages, the mysterious woman who'd captured the heart of one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. Maya smoothed down the emerald green silk of her dress, a creation that had taken her 3 weeks of evening work to complete. She'd chosen the fabric carefully, a beautiful shade that complemented her dark hair and olive skin. The design was elegant but simple, with delicate hand-embroidered details along the neckline that her grandmother had taught her to do as a child. To Maya, it represented everything meaningful about her journey, her heritage, and her values. To the women now staring at her from across the room, it apparently represented something entirely different. "Did you see what David's wife is wearing?" The voice carried clearly across the marble floor, sharp with disdain. Maya turned to see 3 women clustered near the silent auction tables, their eyes fixed on her with barely concealed amusement. The speaker was Caroline Westbrook, whose family had owned half the city's real estate for 3 generations. Her red hair was perfectly styled, and her black Chanel dress probably cost more than most people's cars. Standing beside her was Jennifer Morrison, a pharmaceutical heiress known for her cutting remarks and expensive tastes. The third woman was Sophia Hartwell, whose husband ran the largest investment firm on the East Coast. "I heard she made it herself," Jennifer said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "How? Resourceful." Caroline laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Well, I suppose when you come from nothing, you have to be creative." Though one would think David could afford to buy his wife proper clothing by now. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she forced herself to stand straighter. She'd encountered this kind of casual cruelty before during her months in David's world, the subtle and not-so-subtle reminders that she didn't belong. These women had been born into wealth, raised in private schools, and trained from childhood to navigate high society. Maya had learned to read people's characters in retail jobs, working with demanding customers and impossible managers. The skills weren't entirely different, but the stakes felt much higher here. "Maybe she's making some kind of statement," Sophia suggested, examining her manicured nails. "You know, showing off her humble origins. Though it's rather inappropriate for an event of this caliber." David was across the room, deep in conversation with several potential investors about a new charitable initiative his company was launching. Maya had learned not to interrupt these discussions, understanding that business relationships often determined how much money they could raise for the causes they supported. But watching him smile and gesture enthusiastically while she stood alone being mocked made her feel more isolated than ever. The truth was, Maya had offered to buy a designer dress for the event. David had the resources, and he'd never made her feel guilty about the financial disparity between their backgrounds. But something in her had rebelled against the idea of spending thousands of dollars on a single outfit when that money could feed a family for months. Instead, she'd chosen to create something herself, pouring hours and love into every stitch. "Excuse me?" A new voice interrupted Maya's thoughts. She turned to find Drive. Patricia Rodriguez, the director of the children's hospital that tonight's event was supporting. Dr. Rodriguez was a small woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of years spent healing others. "I wanted to tell you how beautiful your dress is. The embroidery work is exquisite." Maya felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you." It's actually a pattern my grandmother taught me. I thought I recognized the technique, Dr. Rodriguez said warmly. My own grandmother did similar work. There's something special about wearing something made with such care and intention, isn't there? Before Maya could respond, Caroline appeared at her elbow, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Dr. Rodriguez, how lovely to see you. I was just admiring Maya's unique fashion choice myself. Dr. Rodriguez's expression cooled slightly. Unique indeed. It's refreshing to see someone who understands that true elegance comes from authenticity, not price tags. Caroline's smile never wavered, but Maya caught the flash of irritation in her eyes. Oh, absolutely. Though, of course, there's something to be said for supporting the fashion industry as well, especially when representing such important causes. Speaking of important causes, Jennifer interjected, joining their small circle. Maya, I've been curious about your background. David's been rather mysterious about how you two met. Maya had fielded this question countless times over the past 6 months, and she'd learned that honesty was usually the best policy. We met at a coffee shop downtown. I was working there part-time while finishing my degree in social work. How romantic, Sophia said, appearing as if from nowhere. A real Cinderella story. Though I suppose that makes us the wicked stepsisters? She laughed at her own joke, though the sound held no warmth. Dr. Rodriguez stepped closer to Maya, a subtle show of support that didn't go unnoticed. Social work is a noble calling. We need more people who understand the challenges facing families in crisis. Yes, well, we all have our little hobbies, Caroline said dismissively. Though I imagine those days are behind you now, Maya. No need to work when you've married so well. The comment stung because it touched on one of Maya's deepest fears, that people would see her marriage to David as opportunistic rather than genuine. The truth was far more complicated and beautiful than these women could understand. David had fallen in love with her passion for helping others, her determination to make a difference despite having limited resources. She'd fallen in love with his genuine desire to use his wealth responsibly, his humility despite his success, and his ability to see potential in people and projects that others overlooked. Actually, Maya said, finding her voice, I still work with several nonprofits. David and I are partners in more than just marriage. How modern, Jennifer said with a patronizing smile. Though I hope you're not too busy with your little projects to properly support David's career. A man in his position needs a wife who understands the social expectations. Maya felt her temper beginning to fray. These women spoke about her as if she were a particularly slow child who needed guidance to function in the adult world. But before she could respond, she felt a familiar warm hand on her lower back. Ladies, David's voice carried the easy confidence of someone accustomed to command. I hope you're making my wife feel welcome. David Richardson was not traditionally handsome, but he had a presence that drew people to him. His dark hair was beginning to gray at the temples, and his smile had a way of making whoever he was talking to feel like the most important person in the room. Tonight, he wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, but Maya knew he was just as comfortable in jeans and a t-shirt coding late into the night or volunteering at the community center where they'd first worked together. Of course, Caroline purred, her entire demeanor shifting in David's presence. We were just admiring Maya's creative approach to fashion. David's arm tightened slightly around Maya's waist, a gesture of protection she wasn't sure the other women caught. Maya has excellent taste. I've always admired people who aren't afraid to be authentic. Authentic, Sophia repeated, as if testing the word. Yes, that's certainly one way to put it. Dr. Rodriguez cleared her throat. If you'll excuse me, I should check on the auction items. Maya, I do hope we can continue our conversation later. I'd love to hear more about your work with foster families. As Dr. Rodriguez walked away, Maya felt the loss of her only ally in the group. The three women closed ranks, their attention now focused entirely on David. We were just telling Maya how lucky she is, Jennifer said, her voice taking on a flirtatious quality that made Maya's stomach turn. It's not every day a girl from her background lands such a catch. David's expression remained pleasant, but Maya felt the tension radiating from him. I'm the lucky one. Maya brings perspective and compassion to everything she does. Our relationship is built on mutual respect and shared values. How wonderful, Caroline said. Though, I must admit, some of us were surprised by the suddenness of your marriage. It seemed so, impulsive. Maya knew what Caroline was really asking. The society gossips had been speculating for months about why David Richardson, who had famously avoided commitment for years, had suddenly married a woman none of them had ever heard of. The whispers ranged from pregnancy rumors to suggestions that Maya had somehow trapped him. "When you know, David said simply. "Maya is exactly the partner I was looking for, even when I didn't know I was looking." Before anyone could respond, the evening's program began. The hotel's event coordinator called for everyone to take their seats for dinner, and the crowd began moving toward the grand ballroom. Maya felt relief wash over her as the uncomfortable conversation ended, but she caught the look that passed between Caroline and her friends. This wasn't over. The ballroom was stunning, with round tables draped in white linens and centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath. Each place setting included fine china and crystal glasses that probably cost more than Maya used to make in a week. The lighting was soft and romantic, designed to make everyone look their best while encouraging generous donations. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya and David were seated at table 1, along with the hospital's board of directors and several major donors. Dr. Rodriguez was there, along with her husband, a quiet man who ran a free clinic in the city's poorest neighborhood. Maya found herself genuinely enjoying the conversation, discussing the challenges facing children in the foster care system and potential solutions that could be implemented with proper funding. But throughout the dinner, she was aware of the whispers and glances from other tables. Women would lean close to their companions, eyes flicking toward Maya before returning to their hushed conversations. She caught fragments of comments about her dress, her background, her rapid rise in social status. "You're being stared at," Dr. Rodriguez observed quietly during the main course. Maya pushed her salmon around her plate, her appetite gone. "I'm getting used to it." "Are you?" Dr. Rodriguez studied her with the keen perception of someone used to reading people's emotional states. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like it's taking a toll." Maya glanced around the table, grateful that David was deep in discussion with a potential major donor and hadn't heard the exchange. "It's part of the territory, I suppose." David's world comes with certain expectations. David's world or their world? Dr. Rodriguez gestured subtly toward Caroline's table, where the 3 women were holding court with several other society wives. "Because from what I've observed, David chose you precisely because you don't fit their mold." Before Maya could respond, the lights dimmed and the evening speaker took the stage. The program included testimonials from families whose children had been helped by the hospital, as well as presentations about new initiatives that needed funding. Maya found herself genuinely moved by the stories, reminded of why she and David had committed to supporting this cause. During the silent auction portion of the evening, Maya walked among the display tables, examining donated items that ranged from luxury vacations to original artwork. The bidding was competitive, with people casually writing down amounts that represented more money than many families saw in a year. She was studying a painting donated by a local artist when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "I'm telling you, something doesn't add up," Caroline was saying to a small group of women gathered around a jewelry display. "David Richardson doesn't do anything impulsively. There has to be more to this story." "What are you suggesting?" asked a woman Maya didn't recognize. "I'm not suggesting anything," Caroline replied with false innocence. "I'm just saying that successful men like David don't usually marry shop girls unless there's a compelling reason." Jennifer nodded knowingly. "And did you see how nervous she looked during dinner? Like she was afraid someone would ask the wrong question." Maya felt her hands trembling as she pretended to examine the auction items. These women were actively trying to undermine her marriage, to plant seeds of doubt about her relationship with David. The worst part was that some of their questions echoed her own insecurities, the voice in her head that sometimes wondered if she was enough for someone like David. "Maybe we should be more welcoming," suggested another woman, though her tone suggested she didn't really mean it. "After all, if she is David's wife, she'll be part of our social circle for the foreseeable future." "Will she, though?" Caroline's voice carried clearly across the space between them. "These kinds of marriages don't usually last. Once the novelty wears off, reality sets in." Maya couldn't listen anymore. She walked quickly toward the ladies' room, needing a moment to compose herself before she did something she'd regret. The bathroom was mercifully empty, all mirrors and marble and soft lighting that was supposed to be flattering but only emphasized how pale she'd become. She stared at her reflection, trying to see what David saw when he looked at her. The dress that had made her feel beautiful and confident now seemed shabby and out of place. The careful makeup she'd applied hours earlier looked amateurish compared to the professional styling of the other women. Everything about her seemed to scream imposter in this world of inherited wealth and casual cruelty. The bathroom door opened, and Maya's heart sank as Caroline, Jennifer, and Sophia entered. They moved like a pack, closing ranks as they approached the mirror where Maya stood. "Maya," Caroline said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "we couldn't help but notice you seemed upset. Is everything all right?" Maya wanted to leave, but the three women had positioned themselves between her and the door. "I'm fine, thank you." "Are you sure?" Jennifer asked, pulling out an expensive lipstick and touching up her already perfect makeup. "Because you look like you might be in over your head." "We've all been where you are," Sophia added, though Maya seriously doubted that was true. "It's overwhelming, isn't it? Trying to fit into a world you don't understand." Maya felt trapped, cornered by these women who seemed determined to break her down. "I should get back to David." "Should you, though?" Caroline asked, stepping closer. "Or should you consider whether you're really doing him any favors by staying?" The question hit Maya like a physical blow. It was the fear she'd been carrying since the day she'd married David, the worry that she was somehow holding him back or embarrassing him in front of his peers. "What do you mean?" Maya asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. "We mean that David Richardson is one of the most eligible men in the country," Jennifer said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. "He could have anyone. Shouldn't he be with someone who can truly support his career and social obligations? Someone who understands the expectations," Sophia added. "Someone who won't embarrass him at important events." Caroline moved even closer, her perfume overwhelming in the small space. "We're not trying to be cruel, Maya. We're trying to help you see the situation clearly. David is a good man, and he obviously cares about your feelings, but caring isn't the same as being truly compatible." Maya felt tears threatening to spill over, but she forced them back. She wouldn't give these women the satisfaction of seeing her break down. "David and I are perfectly compatible. Are you?" Jennifer asked, tilting her head like a bird of prey studying its victim. "Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you're struggling to keep up. The clothes, the conversation, the social expectations. It's a lot for someone from your background. And it's only going to get harder," Sophia warned. "David's business is expanding internationally. He'll need a wife who can represent him in boardrooms and at embassy parties. Someone who understands how these things work." Maya wanted to argue, to tell them about all the ways she did support David, about the nights they spent planning charitable initiatives or discussing business strategies. But standing in this bathroom, surrounded by women who had been born into the world she was still learning to navigate, she felt every insecurity she'd ever had rising to the surface. "We're not saying you should leave him," Caroline said, her voice taking on a tone of fake reasonableness. "We're just suggesting that maybe you should consider whether this is really what's best for both of you." "Think about it from David's perspective," Jennifer added. "Is it fair to ask him to constantly explain your background to potential business partners? To worry about whether you'll say or do the right thing at important events?" The words were carefully chosen, designed to plant doubt and undermine Maya's confidence. And despite everything she knew about David's love and support, despite all the evidence of their strong partnership, the seeds of uncertainty began to take root. "I need to go," Maya said, pushing past them toward the door. "Of course," Caroline said, her mission apparently accomplished. "But Maya, think about what we've said. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step aside." Maya fled the bathroom, her heart pounding and her mind racing. The ballroom felt too warm, too crowded, too full of people who saw her as an outsider who didn't belong. She found David still at their table, but now she couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was watching them, judging their interaction, wondering how long their marriage would last. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Maya smiled when expected, participated in conversations when required, and played the role of David's supportive wife, But inside she felt like she was drowning, overwhelmed by doubts and insecurities that grew stronger with every whispered comment and meaningful glance. By the time they left the hotel, Maya was exhausted from the effort of maintaining her composure. David was energized by the success of the fundraiser, enthusiastic about the connections they'd made and the money they'd raised for the hospital. "I think we might have secured funding for the new pediatric wing," he said as their driver navigated the late-night traffic. Dr. Rodriguez was thrilled with the response. Maya managed to smile and nod, but her heart wasn't in it. The evening that should have been a triumph felt like a defeat, a reminder of all the ways she didn't fit into David's world. "You were perfect tonight," David continued, reaching over to take her hand. "I saw you connecting with Dr. Rodriguez and the other board members. You have such a gift for making people feel heard and valued." The praise should have made her feel better, but instead it highlighted the disconnect between David's perception and her reality. He saw her successes, but he hadn't witnessed the bathroom confrontation or heard the whispered comments about her background and appearance. "David," she said carefully, "do you ever regret marrying me?" The question surprised him so much that he turned to face her fully. "Regret? Maya, what would make you ask that?" She wanted to tell him about Caroline and her friends, about their cruel suggestions and pointed comments, but in the dim light of the car, surrounded by the luxury that was his world, she found herself unable to form the words. "Sometimes I feel like I'm holding you back," she said instead. "Like you could be with someone who understands your world better." David's expression grew serious. "Maya, you don't hold me back. You ground me. You remind me why any of this matters. Before I met you, I was successful but empty. You've given my life meaning." His words were sincere, and Maya knew he meant them. But the doubts planted by Caroline and her friends had taken root, growing stronger with each passing moment. What if they were right? What if love wasn't enough to bridge the gap between their worlds? As their car turned into the driveway of their home, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't continue living in constant fear of not being enough, couldn't keep subjecting David to the whispers and speculation that followed their relationship. Maybe it was time to consider whether Caroline was right. Maybe the most loving thing she could do was step aside and let David find someone who truly belonged in his world. The thought broke her heart, but as she looked at the man she loved more than anything, Maya began to wonder if loving someone sometimes meant letting them go. Maya spent the following week avoiding social events, declining invitations that once excited her. David noticed her withdrawal, but attributed it to exhaustion from the busy charity season. She couldn't bring herself to tell him about Caroline's cruel words or her growing doubts about their marriage. Everything changed when Dr. Rodriguez called with devastating news. The hospital's main donor had withdrawn funding after hearing rumors about financial irregularities in the foundation. Without immediate support, the pediatric wing project would collapse, leaving hundreds of children without critical care. Maya knew she had to act. Despite her insecurities, she understood fundraising and community outreach better than anyone. She spent 3 days reaching out to smaller donors, local businesses, and community organizations that the wealthy elite typically ignored. Working 18-hour days, Maya organized an emergency fundraising campaign. She contacted her old retail connections, social work colleagues, and dozens of families who had been helped by the hospital. Her handmade dress became a symbol of authenticity that resonated with working-class donors who felt excluded from traditional charity events. The breakthrough came when Maya discovered something shocking while reviewing the foundation's financial records. Caroline Westbrook's family trust had been embezzling money from multiple charities for years, using their social connections to hide the theft. The withdrawn funding wasn't about irregularities in the foundation, but about covering their own crimes. Maya compiled evidence and presented it to David, who immediately contacted federal investigators. Within hours, Caroline and her accomplices were arrested in a dramatic scene at the country club, their crimes exposed to the very society they had used to shame others. The real revelation came during Caroline's interrogation. She confessed that her attacks on Maya weren't just about class differences, but about fear. Maya's genuine connection with David and her authentic approach to charity work threatened the superficial world Caroline had built her identity around. David stood before the emergency board meeting Maya had organized, addressing a room filled with hospital staff, community leaders, and media representatives. His voice carried across the packed auditorium as he spoke about Maya's tireless work to save the pediatric wing. "My wife raised more money in 1 week through grassroots organizing than our formal galas raised all year," David announced. "She did it by treating every donor with respect, regardless of the size of their contribution." Maya didn't just save this project. She showed us what genuine philanthropy looks like. The crowd erupted in applause as Maya stood beside him, wearing the same green dress that had been mocked just days earlier. But now she wore it with pride, understanding that its true value lay not in its price tag, but in the hands that created it, and the heart that chose it. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "Thanks to Maya's efforts, we've not only secured funding for the pediatric wing, but established a permanent endowment for underprivileged families. She turned a crisis into our greatest triumph." The story made national headlines. Maya's approach to fundraising became a model for nonprofits across the country, proving that authentic connections mattered more than social status. Her dress was featured in magazines as a symbol of meaningful fashion versus empty luxury. 6 months later, Maya established her own foundation, focused on supporting working families. David remained her biggest supporter, but now he shared the spotlight with a woman who had found her own voice and power. The wealthy elite who had once mocked her now sought her advice on authentic community engagement. Maya worked with some of them, but on her terms, always remembering that true worth comes from what you contribute, not what you inherit. Standing in the completed pediatric wing, surrounded by children whose lives had been saved through her efforts, Maya finally understood her place in David's world. She hadn't needed to change to fit in. She had needed to stay true to herself to make a difference. The handmade dress hung in her closet, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is simply being authentically yourself, regardless of what others think you should be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.